afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Deepdale. It is as cold as the scarf edge suggests, although there is a nice sunshine that's right in the face of the Norwich City fans, actually, as they sit there. Just under 1,000 of those have travelled here today for David Wagner's first league game in charge of the Canaries, and we'll bring you the team news as it drops in a couple of minutes or so. Connor Southwell joined by Paddy Davitt here in the Northwest.
And David Guetta.
And is that who it is?
No, Roger Sanchez.
Is that who it is?
Roger Sanchez.
Good knowledge. Good. I had no idea.
Maybe, I don't know, I'll make it up as I go along, man.
idea.
A musical impresario.
I'll tell you what that is. That's a copyright strike on YouTube. That's what that is. But we won't get into that. Pad, I mean, we've seen some of the Norwich players come out and survey the pitch, as they so often do. What is your kind of thoughts and feelings in terms of what we're going to see from a lineup perspective this afternoon?
Well, we had a bit of a debate just in the press room, and mainly centred on the top end of the pitch, off the back of David's comments about Pookie, Sargent, Eder. It'll be 2 from 3, 1 misses out. We've had a little clue in that we saw Josh Sargent doing a little bit for the club, pre-match video, which I think they put out on their social channels. You would assume he's not doing that if he's not involved in the 11. So I think it's probably Eder who misses out, but more intriguingly for me is, and this is where we were debating it, is it as a 1 with a 1 behind, or is he going to go with 2 up top? You said that's how he went at Schalke. His Huddersfield teams were more of a 4-2-3-1, at least the base formation, as it was last week. So I'm intrigued to see, I think it will be Sargent and Pookie. I'll be surprised if it's 1 of plus Eder. But it's more how he deploys them, and whether it is, as he said and repeated yesterday, Sargent as a central striker, which technically he could be if he was just in behind Pookie. So that's the intriguing element for me. Other than that, I don't expect too much different from last week in terms of personnel, really. Yourself?
No, I completely agree. I think we'll see Josh Sargent and Temi Pookie up front. Interesting for me around shape. Does he go for kind of the 4-4-2 that we saw certainly out of possession? Or are we going to see like a midfield diamond, which I think is an option as well? We'll have all the answers to that in about a minute or so's time. It's going to be an interesting team selection to see what David Wagner has taken from his first week, first full week as Norwich City head coach. And we should have the team news any second now as the clock ticks to 2 o'clock. So I'll do my best to keep filling until that news does filter through. But it is going to be interesting to see how they line up this afternoon. As I said, just under 1,000 Norwich City fans have made the long trip up to, we are in Lancashire, aren't we? I've got my geography right there, to Lancashire. So obviously hoping to see a win here today, which hasn't been too visible. And here we go. This is the Norwich City team for you. Josh Sargent and Kieran Dow start for Norwich City this afternoon. So it's Krul in goal, Aarons, Omer Bamadeli, Hanley and Yanulis as a back 4. We've got McLean, Sarah, and Dowell, I would imagine, on the right. Hernandez on the left, with Sarah and McLean as a midfield 2, with Pookie and Sargent up front. So it does look like Pad, a 4-4-2. I'll just read you the bench as well before we come in on that 11. The bench is Gunn, Eder, McCallum, Sorensen, Sinani, Nunez, and Gibbs. So a few real talking points there, Pad. Let's start with the goalkeeper, Tim Krul over Angus Gunn. What do you make of that one?
Wow, it's a huge call. It really is. It has to be based on what he feels Tim Krul could give him that maybe Angus doesn't, and that might be progressing the play in terms of the style of football he wants and the build-up play from the back. But on the body of what we've seen this season, that's incredibly harsh on Angus Gunn. And he'll need to explain that decision, and his messaging towards the player himself will have to be very good, because fundamentally, you talk about players when they've got the shirt, that they play well enough to keep the shirt. I don't think he's done anything that warranted him coming out of the team. So, really intriguing on that element. And that'll be one, clearly, of the question marks we put towards him. But also, Kieran Dowell in, Onel Hernandez in. Kieran Dowell, I'm sick of saying he needs to really take his chance and impose himself on it. But he does have another opportunity. That said, the first proper fixture, you could argue, given the Blackburn FA Cup tie was a bit of a getting to know you. This is David Wagner, having looked at it for just over a week now, worked closely with the players, got some more messaging into the players, and he feels Kieran Dowell fits the profile of what he's looking to do. So on you go, Kieran. Onel Hernandez gets another start. He talked about how the tank emptied after 55 minutes last week with him, but he's in this side clearly to try and provide the service for Pookie and Sargent if it is as a 2 centrally. So very intriguing indeed as we get the team sheet.
Very, very harsh on Angus Gunn, who's been one of Norwich City's best performers so far this season, in my view. Very, very big call from David Wagner in his first league game as Norwich City boss.
Just going to hold that up, see if
hold that up. I'm not sure that it's paper and there's a lot of wind, so I'm not. Hopefully you can see that. I'll just try and find the Preston team news for you, but that does look like to be a 4-4-2 to me, just as it was last weekend. Obviously, these things are fairly fluid in and out of possession, so probably slightly different in that regard. Two changes for Preston this weekend. Tom Cannon, who signed on loan from Everton this week, makes his debut. Liam Delap, who cut short a loan move at Stoke to join Preston from Manchester City, is on the bench. Likewise, former Norwich City man Robbie Brady. So they've got Woodman in goal, Lindsay Brown, Johnson McCann, Story, Hughes, Ledson, Woodburn, Diaby and Cannon is their starting 11. Cornell, Bauer, Cunningham, Fernandez, Brady, Parrott and Delap. I resisted making a Parrott joke then. I was going to say his name twice, but there we go. So that's the goalkeeping one. I think we both agree that that's quite harsh on Angus Gunn, and it will be interesting to hear maybe David Wagner's reasoning for why he's decided to make that change, particularly given that I didn't think Tim Krul's distribution last week was anywhere near as good as perhaps we've seen from Angus Gunn this season. But there we go. Tim Krul back. Kieran Dowell, another interesting one. I mean, you touched upon him there. It feels like every time he starts the game, we end up having the conversation of what an opportunity it is for Kieran Dowell. I mean, it's the same again today, because if he can grasp it, and again, it's difficult to imagine him in a really high pressing system and being effective in that. But it's an interesting call again from Wagner.
Yeah, and obviously it's going to revolve around, what is this midfield shape, and if it is a 2, now is that a 4? Because I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, where is the width? Is it Zara? Is it Hernandez? If so, McLean and Dowell as a 2. I don't quite see that. You talked about it pre this team who's dropping. Would he go maybe more of a diamond? And I can see that now with these 4 players. If we assume that it's Sargent and it's the GOAT as a 2 up top centrally, then you have Kenny McLean in the quarterback role, which we talked about again yesterday when I asked him about it. That makes perfect sense. You've got, then you've got maybe Dowell and Zara in those midfield areas with a bit more license to break forward and to knit the play. But then where does Hernandez fit in? I don't see Hernandez at the point. So is it Hernandez and Zara as the 2 wider options with Dowell at a point of a diamond?
It was Sarah and McLean, wasn't it, last week as the central?
Yeah, but if it's a diamond, if we go diamond, then
I would imagine Hernandez's inclusion means that we're going to see some width. And he does like to play with wingers. We know that as well. They were very wing focused last weekend in terms of their play.
Yeah, but where would you say the right-sided winger is in that setup?
I think it would be Kieran Dowell.
Well, yeah,
but they do come a bit more central, don't they? Because of how much the fullbacks push on.
Exactly. But the bottom line is, there's some bold calls both in terms of personnel and what feels like maybe the shape. But the proof's going to be swiftly in the pudding here. And as it's been pointed out as well, no Hugo, which I think on a separate side issue probably indicates, as it did when David Wagner was talking about the 3 excellent strikers in his midst yesterday, he omitted the name of Jordan Hugo. There was that link to Reading during the week, as much as clearly we know, look, Todd Cantwell is heading to the exit door. I think it probably signals that Jordan Hugo will be following him in some shape or form. But yeah, for me, you say, okay, if it wasn't to be Dowell, then who would it be? And, Nunes, Gibbs. But if this is about how Wagner sees his shape and his setup, yeah, well, maybe you want to make a reference to that. Very interesting tweet.
Yes, yeah, Gunn Senior. I don't know if you'll be able to see that on my phone really, but replying to the team news with a couple of eyes, and I have to say I can understand where he's coming from. It does feel like an extremely harsh decision for Angus Gunn.
It's a lot of pressure on Tim Krul now. Let's get it right.
Yeah.
A very experienced player, but his performance levels had dipped to the point, and we're not talking just this season, towards the end of last season, that Angus Gunn deserved his chance and took his chance by common consent. So Tim Krul will be well aware that he's a rather fortunate man to be back in the side today, I think, because Gunn's not done anything materially to warrant coming out of it. And any error, and I don't wish this on him, but any error at all will be heavily scrutinised.
And that's harsh on Tim Krul as well, isn't it? Because the service that he's given to the football club, and actually the 4.5 years or so that he's been here, by and large, have been very good. But it does feel like, well, it's more on Angus, isn't it? For me, he's been
it can
probably
only
up
be,
there in that discussion as with player of the season so far.
It can only be what David Wagner demands from his goalkeeper, and I don't think it's about shot-stopping ability or even maybe commanding your box. It's ball at feet. It's how you
Is that a
construct the
strength
play.
of Tim Krul? I feel like
of the two, I'd say he's stronger in that capacity than Angus Gunn. With the ball at his feet, yeah, I would. But I don't. That to me doesn't warrant Angus Gunn coming out of this side. And we're only reasoning what is the logic.
Yeah.
We will put these questions to David Wagner, you can be sure, after the game, hopefully on the back of a win, because then he'll turn around and say, well, I made
a clean sheet.
Well, let's not be too greedy, but a win. Then Tim Krul is the right call, Kieran Dowell is the right call, Onel Hernandez is the right call, if he gets the result. And that's the knife edge he's living on. If he doesn't get the result, you can guarantee these line of questions will be magnified, because it materially won't have got the desired outcome. So he's paid to make these decisions. He's making some very big ones very early in his Norwich career. But the reasoning as to why Krul over Gunn, other than that, I just can't see it. I can't see it. Why Angus Gunn comes out of the side. It's a strange one.
Yes, it is, and one that I think we're going to be scratching our heads for certainly until kickoff. Just finally, then you mentioned Onel Hernandez there, someone who it's always interesting when he starts a game, because Wagner's predecessor very much cast him in a role as someone to come on to finish games, to impact games. We've seen him do that to some success this season. Birmingham, perhaps most notably, when he came on and scored the winner that night. I mean, what do you make of that decision? I guess it graphically illustrates the lack of natural wide options that Norwich City have, which, given they're about to lose Todd Cantwell and Aaron Ramsey, who wasn't really a wide option anyway, has returned to Aston Villa. They do feel light in that area at this moment in time.
Well, allied to the fact, which has been confirmed now in the last few days by Wagner and the sporting director, Stuart Webber, we won't be seeing Rashica Rosales back here this month. There's no recall option in those loans. So two players you would think under this manager and how he wants to play would absolutely thrive. So it is what it is. That's the cards that they're going to have to play now from here on in. But I think that's less of an issue in terms of why Hernandez he offers that width, because I get the sense he wants Yanulis to provide that width. He wants Aarons to provide that width. And almost those players in those nominally wider midfield areas probably wants them almost as effective inside, cutting infield. And of course, with Hernandez, we can see that. He has that in his game. The questions around why is he starting, should he be starting, will be until we start seeing more end product. That's the top bottom of it. Goals and assists have been very hard to come by, but he does offer that threat. He does bring that pace, and in transition, he can be a useful asset. But ultimately, if he doesn't produce any end product again, much like with Dowell, the debate around is he an effective starting option will continue. So it's for these players to step up now. But so many questions thrown up by that team selection and that potential system that I can't wait now for the game to kick off.
Yes, it's going to be absolutely fascinating. Finally, then, Pad, and actually, I just wanted to bring your scoreline. Everyone will have seen Blackburn, of course, win at Carrow Road last weekend, and in the league, when was it? December. Obviously, that was not a good night for Dean Smith in the end, as it transpired. They're currently 3-0 down to Rotherham away. Just sort of exemplifies everything that this championship has been about this year, which is utter chaos. Pads, speaking of utter chaos, we turn our attention to today.
Me and you.
Well, I was speaking more about the football on the pitch, but you can make that assertion if you like.
I'm sure the audience will make it.
I'm sure they definitely would. How do you see this going today? I mean, it feels a bit unknown. I guess there's some excitement that comes with that. David Wagner's first league game. Preston have lost their last 3 championship games at home. Feels like it's an opportunity for David Wagner to make what will be, to a lot of those Norwich City fans, a very positive first impression.
Yeah, and I think the club said the comms are just tweeting in the last hour, 970 have made the trip. Kudos to them. It's an early start. You're coming from Norfolk.
Yeah.
And what will they expect? I think, despite trying to sidestep or dance through where he's gone with this lineup and the selection, I think what is beyond doubt is that those 970 will see a performance of intensity, to quote the man himself, full throttle, in your face, respect the opponent, but impose ourselves on them. And we saw in the best spells of last Sunday's defeat, we saw that. We saw front foot football in the first 20 minutes, large parts of the second half. Of course, we know the end product was absent, but with Sargent in the side today, that does improve them in that area, you'd hope. But they'll get a performance completely committed. these players are still in the trying to impress this manager phase.
Yeah.
You know, we saw we heard the tone of Max Aarons' post-match interview last week. You know, what's gone has gone in terms of the past, but they're clearly buying into this man's philosophy and his methods. David Wagner himself said yesterday that there's a real excitement in the group, you know, when him and his coaches are talking to players and trying to get their ideas across. I think you'll see all that today. But, and Robin Saintly touched on it in his column today, I think most Norwich fans are realistic to know it's going to take time and it won't be an instantaneous big bang and away we go. And I think there may be more evidence of that today. Good things, bad things, things that they need to work on. But hopefully, and the result will aid this as well, if they get a positive result here, a sense that the page has been turned, they're moving forward, and they can look forward to the rest of the season with a bit of optimism. And I'll throw in my score prediction. I'm going to go... I'm probably going to go draw now, actually. I just think I'm not quite sure. Dowell and Hernandez in that midfield doesn't fill me with the hugest amount of confidence. You watch Dalbert turning a man of the match performance now, in which case...
You'll claim the assist to that, right?
Well, yeah, reverse psychology. But
Absolutely.
I'm going to go 1-1 and hopefully more signs of progress. I'll throw that one back to you, Connor. Where's your head at?
Not feeling great ahead of this afternoon, I've got to be honest.
Surely not a defeat.
Well, I'm probably going to join you on the fence and go for a draw. But I could see it tipping in kind of both directions, really, which is very much sitting firmly on the fence. So, yeah, I'll probably with you. I might go for a 1-1, I think, which is what you went for, isn't it? Yeah, there we go. Just before you go, I'll spin you around. You can see that it's a very tight press box, so bear with me. But just over there in the one sun-kissed part of the stadium is the Norwich City supporters this afternoon. And there is Deepdale. Not a bad view from where we're sat. And, of course, you can follow all of the coverage across our Pinkwood channels this afternoon and the Pinkwood Plus app as well. Pad, thank you very much.
Which is free to download for a month, I might add.
There you go.
No obligation. Don't try it out.
Absolutely. There we go. Thank you very much for joining us from Deepdale. We will see you again very, very soon.